As a professional driver, there is no question that fuel is your highest cost. Fuel Gauges tracks each fuel up, provides your 30, 60, and 90-day miles per gallon average, also tracks maintenance and modifications. Best of all, it is completely free to use. There's no excuse not to use your miles per gallon and start improving your fuel economy. Download the Fuel Gauges app today and keep your money in your pocket where it belongs. Let Fuel Gauges help you master the journey. Visit our website at letstruck.com or call Tribe Care Team at 855-800-FUEL. That's 855-800-3835.
Your money, your taxes, your truck, and your road to success in the trucking industry. This is Trucking Business and Beyond, the show that puts the money where it belongs, back in your pocket.
Good morning, you beautiful bunch of Fockers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Tuesday, October 22nd. That means it is time for the Power Hour. We've got the team here from Pittsburgh Power. It looks like we've got a full team today. Bruce and Eric and Leroy. We'll hear from them, and then we will get to your calls and questions. So line them up. Phone lines are open, 855-950-3835. It is all maintenance all day, so jump in and join us. Bruce, you're up first today. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
So how did you fare in all the storms?
I think Florida's sending me a message telling me to leave and go back to Colorado.
That's crazy. Boy.
4 hurricanes in 3 years.
Wow.
A week ago Thursday, we got a picture of the front of the boat. It's 37 foot long. The nose is in the water. The stern's up in the air. The front cross member of the lift broke. Boat sat about 5 feet out of the water. And so through all the storms, the boat fared well except for the starboard side. The right side got beat up against the motor with the winch that picks it up, and it's got some pretty serious damage.
Wow.
And here's how the insurance companies get you. Your deductible in a named storm, which a hurricane has a name to it,
right,
is 5% of the value.
Oh, yeah, that's a big hit.
So the deductible's $40,000.
Wow.
So I take Rudger, my helper from here in Maryland, and Debbie and Bentley and I jump in the pickup, and we left at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 hours after we saw the pictures, we had the truck loaded with tools and equipment. And 18 hours later, we pulled into Florida, or pulled into the marina. And there's no electricity, so we can't get the stern back down in the water. So the next day, we were able to get a couple guys with a generator to hook up to it, and we lowered it. And fortunately, a good friend of mine, Tony Kopczynski, who is a retired head electrical engineer, Pittsburgh plate glass, also very mechanically inclined, he said, "You better turn that engine over by hand," being the stern was up in the air. I thought, oh, it's up so far, I don't think water got into it. But, I took his advice, and the engine was locked up. It moved 1 inch. And it's an 8.3 liter Cummins, 600 horsepower, 159 hours on it. Brand new oil last April 15th. So I pulled out the dipstick, and the dipstick is showing 6 inches over full, but it's not showing any water. So there's a pump where you pump the water out when you go, or you change the oil, you pump the oil out onto the aft deck, because you can't drain it because you can't get a pan underneath the oil pan.
Right.
And out came 6 gallons of seawater on a 6-gallon oil sump. We got the 6 gallons of water, 6 gallons of oil, got the oil filter off, and then pulled the valve cover. And number 6 exhaust valve and number 2 exhaust valve were the open exhaust valves. And number 2 had about a cup of water in it. Number 6 only had about a half a cup. I had to suck that out. So now keep in mind, you got to go and you got to buy tools and equipment on stuff you don't have. It's not like this is sitting in Pittsburgh Power where everything would be easy in our shop, right?
Right.
So you're making various trips, and then you got to go find plastic tubing to. Oh, you had to pull the injectors out. Now I need an inch pound torque wrench, and then I need a foot pound torque wrench. So I had to go to buy all of those. Everything that you have at your home base, but you don't have down in Florida.
Right.
And so we got it so the engine would turn over and put the injectors back in it. And here was the part that really irritated me. Out of the whole mess. You know, I've been staying pretty calm wearing these patches, and the only thing I had a glass measuring cup that I used to put my catalyst in, and I had to have something to put oil in to put oil on the O-rings on the injectors. And I had it sitting on above the fuel filter bracket because that was level. And here I am, I'm torquing the injectors in, and I'm looking down at the injector, and my hand goes and knocks that cup off. Hits the hull, shatters, oil and glass everywhere. And then I got irritated.
I'll bet. Yeah.
The whole time you're thinking, you know, this was my winter, going to be my third winter in Florida. This was going to be my winter to relax, get back into golf, play more pickleball. There's an ex-owner operator by the name of Pat. And he now drives a company truck, but he and his wife have several kayaks, and I've gone kayaking with them, and I wanted to do more of that. And now this. So
see, Bruce,
anyway, it's got an appointment at the boat body shop on December the 19th. Oh, brand new prop put on last year. Has to come out of Connecticut because it's a back hove made by Sabre, and there's only one guy in the country that knows how to tune the prop so the prop doesn't sing. Did you know props can sing at certain RPMs?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's a brand new prop last year, $4,400. It's smashed. So anyway, we got the engine running. We took it for a ride. Couldn't go over 800 RPM because you just shake the boat to death. So we put about a mile out into the bay and a mile back, and to make sure everything's okay. And the boat's floating and no holes in the hull. None under the water line. I got 2 holes up at the where the top mounts of the hull. Brain fade.
Yeah.
Gunnel, right on the gunnel. I've got 2 holes that are about 4 inches long. I could do all this fiberglass work, but you know what? I don't know if I want the itch, and I don't know if I want to do it in a parking lot. And the damage, all the total damage is about 20 feet long.
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna let a boat shop do it.
Yeah.
And that's that. So now the boat's floating, and the smash lift is down underneath it. And if we get really low tide, the boat's going to be bouncing off of it. So I just spoke to the Marine, and I said, if we get really low tide, you got to let me know so I can have somebody move that boat out of that slip.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, Bruce, it sounds like you're ready to relax and wind down a little bit in life. And it sounds like the universe is saying you should still be turning wrenches.
Yep.
Doesn't want to let go.
Still wrenching, and
still wrenching.
Anyway, it was, and it was not only was it hot, but you're down. You can't stand straight up in the engine room because there's a hatch above you, so you're bent over.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my week last week. By the way, we drove straight home, 3 of us. Took 4 hours longer to get home than it did to get down there. I-75 was a mess coming north out of Florida.
No.
When we went down, you would have thought all the people going back right after the hurricane, it would have been jammed up. But we drove. Most of the driving was during the night. But 18 hours down, 22 hours back, and it made me stop and think: what do the people do that haul just-in-time delivery freight when you get a backup like that?
Yeah,
In North Carolina, just about the whole damn interstate, I-95 tore up. I don't know what their thinking is. Why don't they do 10 miles at a time? But what do you do if you're just-in-time delivery?
There's usually enough time built in all the time. You know, they call it just in time, but it's not like your appointment is right when they need it. It's we don't warehouse nearly as much as we used to. When we went to the just in time thing, it wasn't necessarily that they're waiting on that freight to do something with it, but it's this the schedules are set so that they don't have to warehouse stuff, so that they're getting things in somewhat as they need them. But there's in most of this stuff, there's enough leeway in all these schedules that it's usually not a big problem. Now, if we get
Okay.
these huge snowstorms and the roads are shut down for a couple days, then you're going to see some factories maybe sitting. But it 8-10 hours is not a big deal in most just-in-time freight. There's some other stuff
Okay.
that's going to go on an expedited truck, and it's just in time, mostly because it might be a part that a factory needs because their line went down. It wasn't planned, it wasn't expected, and they've got to get it there as quick as they can. But most of what we call just in time freight is scheduled and got quite a bit of leeway in there.
Well, that's nice to know, because I was really feeling bad for those people. So here's one other question I have. These new guardrails, these cable guardrails they're putting on all the interstates, they favor one side. They stay real close to the left lane on one side, and the other opposing traffic has a lot of grass to go in. And one of the states, the grass median was 80 to 100 feet wide, and yet the southbound traffic had about 6 feet once they go off the berm on the left side. I wonder, why are they keeping that cable? And I've asked several state troopers this question. Nobody can answer me. Why are they keeping the cable so close to one side and letting the other side have all the grass?
Yeah, that doesn't seem to make sense.
Oh, it doesn't. Why
At
don't you
all.
have it down in the bottom, so that if you do drift off the road or something takes you off the road, or if it's icy, you have some time to recover?
Yeah, it seems like you create two problems. On one side, you create not enough space to maneuver or do anything. And on the other side, the more momentum you give a vehicle heading towards that, that just doesn't seem to make sense for either way
Right.
they're doing that there. Huh. Maybe somebody listening
But
knows.
I'm sure somebody is going to call in that's going to know the answer to that. And I've been asking that question for about the last 4 years now.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me.
And then on to diesel engines, we've got a customer, Brian Moan, our shop foreman. He's also replacing Pete. Rick and Brian are both replacing Pete. So Brian's working on special projects. This fellow wants to build an N14 mechanical with the steel top pistons for in a tugboat to run at 500 horsepower, 10 hours straight, wide open. So that's a project we're working on right now.
Wow. Okay.
Because when you think of a truck engine, it's never running wide open for hour after hour.
Right. All right.
Semi-truck engines were designed to be wide open 10% of the time, so that's 6 minutes every hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What else?
Okay. Well, that's it for now.
All right. Well, let's bring in Eric and Leroy and see what they're up to this morning. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Leroy?
He's not here just yet. He's finishing up
See,
a truck with JR. He should be up here pretty soon.
I was about to say the whole team is here, but I would have been wrong.
Yeah. Yep, they're finishing up a tune back there. They need to put some finishing touches on.
I made this statement the other day. I have guests on. Well, I have co-hosts, really. They're not even guests now. I have co-hosts on every day show except Wednesday. Wednesday's the health day, so I don't have a co-host on there, but I bring in more guests. I have a guest tomorrow. But with my co-host, the interesting thing about all of my co-hosts, none of them, this isn't their job. All of them are working full-time in what they do. That's the reason we bring them on, because you guys are all the experts, but you're still doing it every day. On Friday, Joel and Henry, sometimes they're driving while they're doing the show. But I love the fact that the people that we have on here are doing this stuff every day. It's still what they do. But when it comes to scheduling, it's like herding cats. I never know what to expect. Who's going to show up? Who isn't going to show up? Who's going to have something happen at the last minute? So, but it works. And what's new and exciting with you then?
Well, I got a couple things I wanted to go over. One was I want to talk about this new Cummins X15. A lot of people think, and myself included, I'm not going to exclude myself from this. When you hear of the next generation or the next tier of emissions or the newest and latest and greatest, oh, geez.
Right.
How are they going to engineer this? How are they going to complicate that? Cummins actually went opposite. They simplified so many things on this new X15 platform that's coming out in 2027. It's actually refreshing to see this stuff from a shop standpoint, like, finally, they're listening to us, or finally, this makes sense. It just, I think there was a lot of struggle with the initial baseline that the EPA set years and years ago, and all manufacturers have been struggling with this, but
Right.
this new X15 looks really promising, and I wanted to go over some of the key features of this engine. The first thing is how they measure the EGR flow. In the older engines, we had the Venturi tubes that got packed up with carbon a lot. They
Right.
were water cooled because you're putting the hot gases back in the intake. They were trying to control it. They did away with that now. We still have the EGR system, but now they're using a mass airflow meter, which is like basically car technology for the last 30 years.
Okay.
It's measuring the fresh air coming in off the charge air cooler. So it's more efficient, less plumbing. I like that. Simplified.
Yeah.
The next thing is a thermal circulation system for the fueling system. It's got its own self-regulated cooling ports that runs the coolant through there to heat it up, whatever it needs to do for cold start. Helps. Really is a smart design. The biggest thing though is that
on that, I can remember a time when we were really like searching for the next thing, which is what we always do, but we were kind of stuck on fuel mileage. We hadn't come up with anything new in a while. We were, kind of looking what's the next thing. And we did start talking about fuel temperature. Does fuel temperature affect efficiency, and is there something we could do with the fuel heating or cooling or whatever? And we never came up with anything. I mean, we were looking, but it does sound like they are doing something now to manage the temperature of the fuel.
yes, they're regulating it, whether it's too hot, too cold. They
Right.
want to keep it in a safe running atmosphere, and it's electronically controlled. It seems like it's the next generation. It looks really promising.
Interesting.
The biggest thing though on this engine is the new ECMs. This new ECM is now what they call cybersecurity safe, which is really odd for me to hear cybersecurity on an ECM on a truck. Like,
Right.
you're not surfing the internet with this computer. That's usually how people get, viruses and stuff that they can
Well,
put on their computers.
I-
But it's the hackability.
yeah, everybody's
that's where
going
it's
to remote diagnostics, which means there is an
Yes.
open connection there that can be exploited.
Yes. And that's part of the EPA requirements for the next tier of emissions is non-hackable ECMs with telemetrics. And if you've ever heard of telemetrics, that is what you just said. It's remote diagnostics, remote
Right.
tuning, it's remote communication to the ECM without being plugged in to a laptop. One thing they did mention about this ECM and how they worded it, I caught it, and I don't know if anybody else caught this or not on one of their videos. They left multiple unused pins for future options such as VVT. And I'm thinking, variable valve timing. That's an interesting concept on a diesel engine. I like that.
Hmm.
So if they go to a variable valve technology, they already have the overhead cams. I'm seeing a lot of similarities out of the automotive industry carrying over to this. It's very interesting. I
Yeah.
do like this.
Hmm.
The
Well,
next thing, the water pump. The water pump cartridge now can be changed without removing the dampener. And I know my technicians are going to like that as long as everybody else out there that's ever changed one. It's just one less thing you have to do. They've
yeah.
simplified it.
Yeah. So
The dampener, go ahead.
this is their fuel agnostic platform, right? This thing can be easily shifted back and forth between all the different fuels.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, this is the X15 platform, they're calling it. The dampener now has 3 drive pulleys attached right to it, behind, on it, and in front of it. One of the biggest reasons they went to this was to get the gear ratio the final drive gear ratio correct for their 48 volt alternator. They needed to gear that just at the right RPM speed to supply the electronic heating elements to the aftertreatment system, which is also something I don't have enough information to talk about that just yet this week, but that's something I'm going to dive down that rabbit hole next, because the electronic heating on the aftertreatment system makes all the sense in the world to me. It looks like it's going to eliminate a lot of our problems we've had. Another nice thing for the technician standpoint is the EGR cooler is now up on top of the engine, parallel with valve cover. So
Oh.
it's way more accessible. The plumbing is around the front of the engine. All the bulkhead fittings, all of everything else as far as the plumbing goes, the individual pieces are the same as what they've been for the last 12 years. But now they just moved it in a different location. So again, they simplified a lot of it. The turbos are basically the same, but they did get more efficient wheels. They're looking into different wheel technology, the blade number, the pitch, the angle, everything like that. They
Yeah.
are playing around with that, and they seem like they got it pretty much nailed down. The big thing with the bottom end is the pistons now. They are now going to be a 22.8 to 1 compression ratio, which seems pretty high,
Yeah.
but they a smaller piston now. They raise the pin height on the piston, and that reduces friction on the side load. So
Hey,
it really freed up a lot of parasitic loss on the bottom end.
Eric,
And
that's been the issue we've been talking about and explaining for a couple of years now, with the difference in the design of the Volvo is the most extreme on this. The Freightliner's pretty close, and then Cummins was kind of way off in the other direction. And that was one of the things we've always talked about, that it's this, and this is so much easier to understand if you can look at diagrams. We talk about piston speed, which the first time I heard that confused me, because I thought, well, don't we measure that in RPM? But we don't, because you can change the distance of travel, and you can have a piston, 2 engines at the same RPM, and the pistons traveling at very different speeds, and at different speeds at different points in the journey. And you can manipulate that with the rod length. Here they're moving the wrist pin, but that is there's several advantages to doing this and moving in that direction. And one of them you just mentioned, that extreme angle you end up with, and side loading that piston over and over. So it looks like they're starting to move in that direction as well.
they made a huge jump. When you look at the new piston versus the old one, there's a couple inches of height difference.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah, that's
drastic.
And that
It's huge.
changes a lot of things on the internal and the efficiency of that engine. And this is the
Absolutely.
trend. The new international engine almost copied Volvo on this, and it looks like now um, Cummins is moving that way. I really hope they do. I just had this conversation yesterday. The MX engine we're seeing some real major issues with this thing. They're replacing engines. These things are not doing well for some reason. And I was just saying, if you really don't like the X15 platform, and I haven't over the last 10 years, and the MX kind of died, then you can't buy a PACCAR product. Those are your only two options. So it's good to see. I really hope this is an improvement. My fear, and it's interesting to hear all this. My fear was because it was fuel agnostic and they wanted it to be able to run all these different fuels, that it was going to get more complicated. It sounds like, though, they've really done a lot of improvements to simplify things.
They have. That seems to
That's
be
a
like the
really
general
good
thesis
sign.
of
Yeah.
this entire engine. And I really like what I've seen so far from a mechanic standpoint, but also from a Cummins standpoint.
Yeah,
It
good.
just makes the liners. They changed the way the liners are now because they moved the coolant passages. So what happened before was they had stagnant flow around the top of the liners, and that's where your main heat concentration is, which can promote cavitation. These new liners have increased coolant flow at the top, and that reduces the chances of cavitation because we're able to control the combustion temperatures a lot better. One thing that I really want to point out is the fuel pumps. I know Cummins. I mean, you can't deny it. They did have a problem with their fuel pumps back in 2010, 11 with the ceramic plungers, and they
Right.
learned from their mistakes. There's not one engine manufacturer out there that's perfect. We've all made mistakes. Their new fuel pump now is totally revolutionary as far as compared to the old ones. It now has opposing pistons, one on each
Really?
side, to balance the counter shaft. Yes,
Wow.
makes it a lot more streamlined.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, though, is there's no more oil lubrication. They're using fuel for lubrication, so there is zero chance of cross
Wow.
contamination in the oil galleys now. So that problem is completely eliminated. They
Interesting.
saw it,
Yeah.
they fixed it, and they eliminated it. And then the last thing is they're going to a cartridge style fuel filter and oil filter now, which isn't big design change at all by any means. But one little neat thing I did like is they have drain cocks on the bottom of the plastic housings. So if you've ever changed any style of cartridge filter, when you pull it out, you got a good chance of spilling it, dripping
Right.
it everywhere, and it's just kind of a messy way to do this.
It is.
Now
Yeah.
you just simply plug a hose in the bottom, turn a knob, drain it, pull the cartridge out, no mess, no fuss. I really like how the whole general theme of this engine was to simplify, but yet still go to the next tier of everything, electronics, emissions, mechanical. They just really, I think, stepped up to the plate with this engine and really hit a home run with it. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm kind of talking big promises here. We don't know. This is all brand new. But if it does what they say it's supposed to, this could be a game changer. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like a
Yeah.
very big contender now.
That would it would be really nice if we were back to the point where you had multiple choices on trucks. Now the difference is from back when we had lots of choices. Today they're all very, very proprietary. It was interesting yesterday. I was talking about heavy haul, and I've made the statement, and I absolutely believe this, that Volvo Mac is the premier heavy haul platform now. Really, I can't imagine why I would look at anything else if I was going to be pulling lots of weight. And the reasoning is they're downsped engines with lots of low end torque, and that drive line, that 14-speed transmission with two low crawler gears and a very low reverse, and then overdrive on the other end. It's one of the most versatile drive lines I've seen. And it's interesting now that we've got these really proprietary systems, but it would be great if international is back in the game and that's an option. And pack car with a good engine, the Cummins being getting rid of some of the problems they've had for about a decade plus now. It would be interesting again to have all those options.
It's funny you use the word proprietary because I hear that a lot from my customers that call in. Hey, I bought a pack car, or I bought a Volvo.
Right.
If I talk to somebody that owns a Volvo engine or a pack car engine, they use the word proprietary very often, and it seems to be that's one thing you have to take in consideration when you're choosing another platform to drive is who can work on it.
It,
You're kind of, I don't want to say you're stuck at the dealership level, but you really have to do your homework
you,
first.
you
There's a lot of
really
good
do.
guys out there, but yeah, that's one thing. It's funny you said that because it just struck a bell with me that is something I do hear a lot is the word proprietary. Like,
Well, and
I have to go
here's
back to dealership.
here's kind of what I mean by that. Go back to when you could build any OEM truck with any of the available engines that were on the market. You really had two driveline choices usually, Eaton and Spicer, and everybody bought each other and changed names, and it got confusing. And we had Meritor for a while, but for the most part, it didn't matter back then if you decided you either wanted a Cat, a Cummins, or a Detroit in the truck. When you opened those engines up, they all worked about the same. There was very few differences in the technologies in the engines themselves. If you knew how to work on one, you could figure out how to work on the other one. That is no longer true. That's what I mean by proprietary. Not only are you buying a truck now that's probably got an integrated driveline, all from the OEM, each truck driveline and engine is like wildly different technology now. Volvo is turbo compounded. The Cummins is agnostic on fuel. Very different technologies. And look, you got a different fuel pump you've never seen before. That's what I mean about
Yeah,
proprietary. In a way, they've become much more complicated, and you have to have specialized knowledge to know how to work on these things now.
yeah, special tools,
Yeah.
special training, I mean everything. They're all going their different ways, and I do miss the older days where you could go to any truck dealership, pick
Yeah.
out the model truck you want, and then
Right.
say, okay, I want a
I,
yellow engine, I want a red one, I want a
I,
blue.
I,
Those days are definitely long gone,
yeah,
but it would be kind of neat to see that again.
I call those Mr. Potato Head trucks. You just pick parts and you put it together, right?
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah. Yeah, you just picked your parts and you put it together, and everybody could make a slightly different Mr. Potato Head, but that's not the case now.
Yep.
Yesterday, we were talking about this heavy haul issue, and when I made the statement, I really think that Volvo has the premier heavy haul platform. Somebody responded and said, I don't get why you're saying the model of the truck. Doesn't it come down to the specs? And they're correct. It does come down to the specs, but the reason now the model of the truck matters is because you can't get that drive line on any other truck. So when I talk about this drive line being so good for heavy haul, that's it. It's a Volvo Mac driveline. You can't get it in any other truck. So now, in a sense, the OEM, the make of the truck matters a lot when it never really
Yeah.
used to be that big of a deal because we all built our driveline the way we wanted it, no matter what truck we put it in.
Yep. Yeah. Things are really turned differently than what we originally thought. 10,
Yeah,
20 years, even 30 years ago. I mean, just completely different than what we thought it was going to. And then
interesting.
one other thing I want to talk about before we
Sure.
move on, PPG, Pittsburgh Paint Groups. I just read an article this morning that they're
Wait,
laying off 1,800 employees. Now, this is U.S. and Europe division, but primarily U.S. from what I've been
you-
reading.
wait,
And I
wait a minute. I
know
want
that
to go
they,
back. Isn't it
okay,
Pittsburgh plate glass?
Pittsburgh. Yeah, it is. You're right. I said Pittsburgh Paint Groups, didn't I?
Yeah.
That's my auto body background. I'm used to
Yeah.
painting cars and
Well, that's
dealing with
where
DuPont
eh,
PPG. And
that's where I remember PPG from too, because that was the only brand I ever used when I was painting.
yeah, they made some good stuff. Do you
Yeah,
remember
they
using
did.
NCP?
What
The
was that?
NCP 270 primer
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
was my favorite.
I know.
Love that stuff.
Yeah.
But they're going to lay off 1,800 employees just to cut back on costs. And I know they haul a lot of their chemicals by truck, and I'm kind of watching that, making sure that it doesn't turn into something bigger.
We're
But I think it's just the tide hopefully is turning. That's what I'm hoping. I mean, I know everybody says, "Oh, we hit rock bottom. We're going to come back. The economy's got to come back."
you,
I'm hoping that too. I just don't know though. You see more articles like this, and then it's kind of, I don't know.
here's the problem, and I talk about this a lot. We've been talking about it since about 2017. In 2017, we expected a downturn. And it was really just based on time. Historically, we have pretty clear business cycles, and if you keep an eye on things, you can usually kind of predict what's coming. Maybe not really accurately, and you might be a little off on the timing, but for the most part, we know after you've had a long economic run up, there's going to be a downturn. I mean, our economy is a roller coaster. It always has been. Except in 2017, it didn't happen. And then we just kept waiting and thinking, because really we haven't had a recession since '08. So by 2017, we were looking at almost a 10-year run, which is a long time of expansion historically. So we were expecting it to drop. Well, in trucking, things just kept happening. We got the ELD mandate, which, as much as drivers hated it, it raised rates. And it had to, because you changed the supply side of the supply and demand curve. We know that drivers used to cheat. And when you cheat, you expand the supply, which drops prices. That's just how economics works. So when that restriction was put on, ELDs stopped people from cheating, rates went up. We expected that they would. Then by the time we were just kind of getting over that rate increase and rates were back on their way down, COVID hit. And COVID has screwed up everything. I mean, all bets are out the window. This doesn't look like any economy we've ever seen before. So now we've been through these last 3 or 4 years waiting for all these COVID effects to kind of wash out of the economy. The the thing that worries me about this is that trucking is a leading economic indicator. It tells us where the rest of the economy should be going. The problem this time is trucking is in a recession and has been in a recession, and the economy never followed. The stock market is still setting new highs. Now, we're seeing the signs that this isn't going on much longer, I don't think. You're seeing lots of layoffs. That is becoming a really common thing. In trucking, I mean, it's been going on for a couple of years. I saw another company this morning in Illinois basically got rid of all of their company drivers, and they're going to try to survive with owner operators for a while. My fear is we've never really had the recession in the economy, and it's still coming. That's what I'm worried about. That I don't know that we have anything to dig out of in the overall economy yet. I'm not sure that we've had the recession.
That's true. Yeah, time will tell, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and now everybody's just holding their breath, waiting for the election, because the results of that seem to be we're going to head in one of two very different directions based on who wins.
Yeah, exactly.
So we will
Well,
see, but I still think all the predictions in trucking are is that we've survived the bottom and we should be starting a climb out right now. And in the last couple of weeks, that's been true. Rates have been climbing. Fuels actually went down for the first time in a while. The problem with that is we just had some really big storms. And really big storms have impact on freight, and we've had all these weird supply chain issues, and that affects freight. So it just seems to me like there's still something out there, and we haven't faced it yet. It's kind of the way I'm feeling. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that the election goes the way we want it to, and we actually do start climbing out, and 25 is better than 24. um, so far right now, freight rates are better in 24 than than they were in 23. We're up on freight rates, really. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
All right.
And that's all I have.
Well, it was a handful. Leroy around yet?
Not yet.
All right. Well, we'll get to calls, and he can jump in and join us when he gets here. Let's get started in South Carolina. Tony, welcome.
Thanks. I was changing my fuel filter this weekend, and I got little black specks all in it. Looks like soot to me. I mean, if you put it in between your fingers, it'll pretty much disappear. You know, you can rub it away, kind of. But it was all in my fuel filter, and I was wondering why it's in there and how it got in there and how to fix it.
What engine is it, Tony?
I'm sorry, a 2000 N14.
Okay. It could be a couple things. Typically, what we see on the N14s, though, is some sort of an algae whenever there's no consistency to it, like if it's just kind of like black slime. Now, one other thing it can be is asphaltene. Now, can you see to the bottom of your fuel tanks if you take the cap off, or is there like an anti-siphon screen in there?
I have one of each, but I have not looked in it.
Okay. So the first thing you want to do then is take the fuel cap off the tank and look down inside there with a flashlight. See if the fuel is still like a greenish color or if it's black as well. And then the next thing you want to do is take like a yardstick or any kind of a maybe even a branch or something and tie a rag on the end of it and zip tie it, make sure it doesn't come off. And then try to scratch the bottom wall of the tank. And you want to see if it like breaks off. The heating and compression of fuel molecules. And it's actually an asphalt polymer, like a plastic polymer, like what you'd use to pave roads with. And it incubates in a warm, dark environment, which is exactly what your fuel tank is. And especially in the summertime, I see this a lot more. And it will start to incubate on the bottom of the tank and then grow up the side walls of the tank. If it is progressed to that far, you're going to have to drain the fuel tanks, have them pressure washed out, make sure that they are sparkly clean before you reinstall them. And then you can run a chemical called asphaltene. It's made by Penray Chemical Company. And you just dump a couple bottles of that in each tank for the first couple weeks while you're running it. And that's like a residual cleaner to get rid of anything that may be left in like the lines or the injectors or the fuel pump, like that. But it's not strong enough to get rid of it once it starts growing up the walls of the tank. It's more of a residual cleaner and not like a shock treatment type thing. So that's if it's asphaltene, that's what you want to look for. If it's some sort of algae, it's tough to say which one. I've seen so many like weird morphid like phasing of algae going on lately. I've seen more different strands of it than any time before. But usually a good name algae killer will get rid of it. We have like Killam on the shelf here made by FPPF. The fuel max mileage fuel catalyst does have some properties in there to get rid of this as well, and along with our flashpoint too. So once you determine what it is, you may want to start considering running our max mileage and our flashpoint as like a super fuel conditioner and treatment to
Uh-oh. I'm not sure if we lost Eric or... Nope, we lost me. Here we go again. All right. I've
Ready to connect. Click connect to show now. You are connected as the host. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-in Studio web interface. Audio recording is on.
too. That's probably going to be one or the other.
Okay, even though it looks like soot, feels like soot.
Is it slimy or is there any consistency to it?
Not slimy at all. I mean, as soon as you put it, I mean, it's just almost the size of I don't know, it's very, very small specks. And you put them in between your fingers, and it's got, diesel fuel there too. So once you rub it a little bit, it like almost disintegrates.
Do you have rubber fuel lines on this truck?
I do not.
They're plastic fuel lines?
They are. Yep.
Okay. Because the other thing it could be would be a rubber hose starting to deteriorate. Sometimes you get little black pieces, and it's actually the rubber starting to dissipate. But since you have plastic fuel lines, that's not going to happen. So I'm going to say it's probably an algae or an asphaltene issue.
Okay. No way soot can get back into. I mean, it pretty much has to be in the tanks to be going into the fuel filter, correct?
Yeah, it has to come from the tanks.
Right. And no way soot can get back to the tanks.
Well, we have return fuel.
Right.
Could come. Yeah, it could come from the return line because that's what's feeding the tanks.
Right.
But I don't typically see that with an N14 though, without other problems as far as like compression, maybe somewhere it shouldn't be, or maybe injector cups leaking, something like that. I don't see that happening here. Usually when it's like a slimy consistency and it kind of dissolves in your fingers, it's either going to be asphaltene or some form of algae.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it.
All right. Eric, for a while there, we had a run on calls where people's filters were turning black. And I went through all the same stuff you just went through. And algae tends to be slimy if you can feel it. Asphaltene tends to be sticky if you can feel it. So sometimes if you can get down to it, you can tell the difference if you've looked at them enough. We were getting these calls where people are just saying, well, my filter keeps turning black, but I have no performance issues. Everything's running great. And the best answer we could come up with, it didn't seem to create any kind of a restriction really in the filter. The best answer we could come up with was maybe we're actually getting soot in the fuel, but it doesn't seem to affect anything other than the color of the filter.
Correct. Yeah. We never had a problem. The guys that are filters, asphalt really fast, loss in power, loss in performance, fuel
Right.
mileage. There was other things to it.
Right. All right. Let's continue on. We'll go to Mississippi. Billy, welcome.
Hey, Kevin. How y'all doing this morning?
Good. Looks like we've got an oil sample here. Oh boy.
Yes, yes, sir. This is my first one.
My guess is you've been adding some coolant to this truck. Yes, Billy?
Yes, I have. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have been adding some coolant.
Yeah, you've got an internal coolant leak. Your coolant is ending up in your oil.
Okay.
And it's creating some issues, so this has got to be taken care of. Your base is dropping. We're seeing some oxidation. More importantly, though, we're starting to see wear metals. Are you using catalyst?
Yes, I am using catalyst.
Okay, so the iron's high, but the catalyst can cause that. How many miles are on this oil? It doesn't say on here.
Let me see, I got it right here. 23,861.
Yeah, so the catalyst is adding to the iron, but not that much. You're also getting iron as a wear metal, and we've got aluminum. So a lot of upper cylinder wear. The coolant strips the zinc out of the oil, and it takes away a lot of the oil's ability to protect the metals. So that's why we start getting wear metals. So what year, what engine? Give us some details. How many miles? I don't have anything on this.
It's a 2014 DD13. It's got $1 million. Well, at the time of the sample, it was 1,031,145. Shell Rotella 10W30 P5.
Okay. How long? You said it's your first sample. How long have you owned this truck?
I've owned it for 5 years.
Okay. So you've got a lot of history. When did the coolant leak? When did you have to start adding coolant?
I started adding coolant about 6 months ago.
Okay. So this has been going on a while.
Yes.
Eric, thoughts on this? DD13, what's the most likely place we're getting oil or coolant in the oil?
With,
EGR?
with the aluminum, well, with the aluminum and the coolant, it may be like an EGR cooler, possibly an oil cooler, because I'm pretty sure they're aluminum material for the actual cooling element itself.
Okay.
Now, typically, I would see a little bit of tin or maybe even lead accompanied with that because of the solder joint coming apart. But being that it's been going on for 6 months,
That may have already occurred.
those particles may have been sorted out.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking it's probably one of the coolers, if I had to guess.
EGR oil. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So I need to get that changed right away and get some new oil in it. Correct.
I would get
Yeah.
new oil in quickly. If you can address the coolant issue right away, absolutely address it. But the oil is more important right now. I would get some clean oil in this thing. If we don't think we're going to get this fixed right away, this is one of those times I would say throw a little Lucas oil conditioner in just for some extra protection till we figure it out.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Well, it's at the shop now, so I can get them to check it out and see if they can figure out if it's EGR or the oil cooler and go from there.
Yeah, you are definitely getting coolant in the oil, so you really don't want to start running this truck a lot until we figure out where it's coming from.
Okay. On that base, it says 1.77. What should that be? The base.
The whole base issue is changing a lot. At one point, they're flagging that as like a level 4. In reality, if we have any base left at all, it's still doing its job. It's when the base gets to 0 that you will probably start seeing numbers to the left where it says instead of TBN, total base number, you'll start to see a number for total acid number, TAN. That's a problem. Now you're going to start doing damage to the engine. So I think the labs are going to end up revising their numbers on base. We don't need as much base as we used to. There are issues when you overload the base. It starts affecting other additives. So we don't want to just say, well, we can just throw all the base in there we need. So keeping that base down around 2 or 3 even, that's plenty of protection. When it gets lower than that, we should start thinking about adding some base. If we're extending our drains and the rest of our oil looks good and it's just a base issue, we can just add base. Or in your case, we're going to be doing an oil change anyway, so don't worry about the base.
So don't worry about the base.
Right.
Okay. I got you. Okay. And you guys' opinion. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, I did reach out to my rep from Horizon Laboratories that do the oil sampling about the base before. Their take on the base number was exactly what you said, Kevin. We're seeing less and less of it, but they did tell me once the base number gets below about 20% of its original value, which in this case, you're probably right there because T5 is probably right around a 6.5, 7 out of the jug. The acids overtake the alkalines, and it is dangerous to the metals at that point. So he did recommend not running it down to 0, but getting it replenished around the 2 to 3 marker, which is exactly what you said.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And historically, we almost never saw this number go down under 1. I mean, I had people running oil for 500,000 miles without a change because they were running the OPS, but they had those engines that would burn about a gallon every 5,000 or 6,000 miles. So even at 500,000 miles without an oil change, the base was still up in the 3 and 4 range all the time because they were replenishing every time they put a gallon in. Now these new engines are so tight, we don't use any oil. And now we are starting to see these issues with low base. You almost never used to see this.
Yeah.
Correct.
Do you think I've done a lot of damage to the engine, or is there any way to tell at this point?
Here's part of the problem. the
No.
beauty in oil sampling, one sample gives us information. A history of samples tells us everything. There was a
Right.
pattern somewhere to get us to where we are now, but we can't see that pattern because we don't have the samples. We don't know if
Right.
you've had. Yeah, I think your bearings are fine, because we're not seeing any, and bearings are usually one of the first things that are going to get attacked and start showing wear. Your wear seems to be
Yes.
more upper cylinder. I don't think you've done a lot of damage here. Eric, what do you think?
Okay.
I don't think at all. I usually see weird elements as far as
Right.
where metals are concerned, like specifically aluminum, with a DD platform. I don't know why, but that seems to be going trend. Now yours is a lot higher than I typically see, but I don't think you've caused any damage. I think you're perfectly safe.
Okay. Okay, that's good. So, because like I said, it's sitting at a shop right now to getting some other work done, so I can get them started on this
Perfect.
before I go back out on the road again.
Yep. Perfect.
Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Eric, Bruce, this is such a great example of, had he not done this one sample, we could have lost an engine over this. I mean, these are the kind of things that you have almost no indication of. That, people think, oh, well, I can't be getting coolant in my oil because my oil level would be going up. No, that's not the kind of volume we're talking about here. You're not going to notice it in the oil. You're not going to see it in there. You're not going to smell it. You rub it on your forehead all you want. All those goofy tricks about, you're not going to know this is happening, and it would eventually do a lot of damage. And here, a $50 oil sample probably just saved an engine.
Yep. I just got a message emailed to me. This is pertaining to last week's show when the guy called in about the tractor and the positive battery being grounded.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah. That was weird.
Okay. This message comes from Dennis Snyder. Snyder Trucking looks like. This message is for Eric. Just listen to October 15th Power Hour. Guy was asking about a tractor with a positive battery cable going to the ground. There are positive ground systems. White Truck used them in the 60s and 70s. Drivers would bolt their CBs to the dash and burn them up because they hooked the grounded base to a positive dash. They had to be insulated to keep them from burning up. The guy with the tractor has to keep that in mind if it is truly a positive ground system. They can be changed. We did several. So thanks, Dennis, for that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. That's kind of interesting.
That's
Tidbit
really
information.
interesting.
Not know that.
It's interesting how much damage the big LTL fleets had to deal with because of the CB craze. I lived through this. When I was growing up, my dad worked for LTL companies. And when Smokey and the Bandit, the movie, came out, that kind of, prior to that, there weren't a lot of truck drivers using CBs. It was a lot did, but a lot didn't. It was kind of Smokey and the Bandit that the whole CB craze took off. That's when my dad got his first CB. Everybody else was getting them. The thing is, they would slip seat those trucks like crazy. The big LTL companies, my God, 3 people might be in that truck in a 24-hour period some days. So they had these setups. My dad had a friend who was a brilliant woodworker, and they would build these cases to carry their CBs, and it had an external speaker on the case, and they were all set up, and they would just carry it, and they would strap it down to the dash, and they were tearing up dashes. Then they all put their antennas on a pair of vice grips, and they would vice grip to the mirrors. Well, those were those old metal tube mirrors, and they kept crushing the mirror brackets. It was that was a big thing for a while, coming up with better ways to carry your CB around when you moved from truck to truck.
Wow.
But
How things have changed.
Yeah, the LTL fleets played hell with that because these guys were tearing all kinds of stuff up. I had no idea about that whole positive, negative. I'm still not even understanding what that means.
To be totally honest, I don't either. I don't know how that system works. I'm going to definitely do some more research on
Yeah,
it. But yeah, there are positive ground systems,
interesting.
which to me that's an oxymoron.
Yeah,
Positive ground.
I know that's like, what do you mean positive ground? That makes no sense to me at all. All right.
Yeah, my little simple brain, I can't get wrapped around that.
Hey, hey, Bruce, can you move your mic down?
I
just
think
a
I
little bit?
slightly remember that one, that positive ground.
Do you
But
really?
that was a long time ago.
Bruce, do you remember when the CBs first became popular? Didn't you work for?
Yeah,
Did you work for an
absolutely.
LTL company for a while?
I was in 1969 with Motor Freight Express.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that was a little early though. We were just coming into
CB
that.
craze really hit when I was with Draveau Corporation as their traffic manager of their light metals plant, and I was traveling for them. Actually, in the mid 70s, I used to travel on an airplane. Took my CB radio and a clamp-on antenna that went
Right.
on the rain gutter because I was spending time in Eagle Pass and Laredo, Texas, for Loftus Engineering. But I think I got the first CB back in around 71, 72.
You were early then.
I had to come up with a bracket.
Yeah.
I had to come up with a bracket to put it on a 69 Corvette, but I got it on there.
Yeah.
Right between the roof panels.
Right after my dad got his, I was about 12 or 13. So we're talking about 75 or 76 here. Then I got a base station at home. And I actually got into the whole CB thing back then. One of the things I could do was occasionally I'd be able to talk to my dad while he was in the truck. He might be coming close enough that, I could talk to him from home on the CB, which was really cool. But they used to do, I'm trying to think, they had a name for these things. What were they? There was a name for these get-togethers. So people who had met on the CB, it was the social media of today is what it was. You would meet people on the CB and you would talk to them sometimes for months or maybe a year or more. And then you would go to these jamborees. I don't know. They had a name for these things, but you would meet up and everybody would exchange everybody would have stickers with their call signs and all that. That was a big thing for a while. I did that for a couple years. All right. Let's get back to some phone calls. We might have an answer on our road barrier cables here. John, what you got?
Well, I talked to a road engineer one time, and if they put the road cables down in the ditch, you have a high-speed car can actually fly over top of the road barrier. So they put them up on the edges of the median, or like Bruce was saying, on one side or the other.
Yeah,
so those cars can't jump over them. It's more of a direct at the height of them coming off the road.
That's a more logical answer than what I was expecting.
Yeah,
it actually makes some sense.
That or up in northern Minnesota, they plow the roads. Then there'd be even more of a ramp to go over top of the barrier. So they do it up on the edges of one side of the road, so you don't go over top of them and into traffic, oncoming traffic, etc.
Okay.
Okay.
That seems to make some sense.
I guess I'll have to accept that.
Yeah.
That's your guys' answer that I got from a road engineer. So
it makes some logical sense. So we'll go with that. All right. Thanks for the. Oh, I had already hit the button. Let's go to Oklahoma. Paul, welcome.
Howdy.
What's on your mind today?
I'm eastbound on I-40. Well, I got a few things now, but I'm eastbound on I-40 in Oklahoma, and the cheese grater wire barrier is right there in the middle, split 50-50 in that section, and it's got a pretty big V in it. So, only thing I can think of why they put it on one side, for the grass mowing contractor, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, there's another issue. Yeah, you're right.
Hey, Kevin, I have to step away for 5 minutes. I have something I have to take care of. I'll be
Got it.
right back.
Got it. All right.
Okay. So back to my questions. So that new Cummins, Eric, you said it'd be available in 2027. Is that 2027 model year or not till 2027? We don't know.
It's the 2027 model year, so I'm assuming you'll be able to see it probably late next year, early 26.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm a little Cummins shy at the moment. So
Yeah.
so, but everything you rattled off, it's like, well, that sounds like an improvement. So, but
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed.
well, I'll be honest. Peterbilt still make the best car carrier. I'm not 100% convinced by the new 589 though. I think they screwed up a little bit on the hood, but that's a whole nother story. So, I guess I'll wait and see. But I got to save up some more cash now. Done eliminated a pair of it last week. So, and then I did have a question for Bruce, but you might know, Eric. A 444 Cummins, is that electronic engine or is that mechanical?
I remember
That'd be
as
mechanical.
mechanical. Yeah, I don't think there was ever an electronic version of it, was there? I don't
The
believe so.
closest thing to that would be an N14.
Okay.
Okay. So the
Yeah, all
N14 came out
444.
after the 444.
Yes, and they did make a mechanical N14 in between there too. Like you
Right.
could get a mechanical N14,
Okay.
and then you could get an electronic controlled N14. But the N14 was the very first electronic controlled Cummins engine.
Okay. Right. I was just curious. So. Right, I'll carry on. Oh, and then
Uh-oh. Well, he's not going to carry on. I didn't hang up on him. We lost his call. Let's and we've got calls open. You know, my internet connection has been awful so far this week. I got kicked off 3 times yesterday, twice already today. And we seem to be losing more and more calls too. So if you want to jump in, phone lines are open, 855-950-3835. We're going to head off to Ontario. Kevin, welcome.
Good day. Thanks for taking my call. I'm having a problem with the soot level, and it does passive regens down the road, but on August 12th, I got a SPN 81 FMI 16, and the soot level just, like, I'm doing passive regens sometimes twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. I just kind of wondering what that is. It's a ISX.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. What year ISX is it?
16. It's in a 2017 Volvo.
Okay. Are you running our max mileage fuel catalyst?
Yeah, I started running that in January of this year after I had the DPF cleaned. So right from the get-go after it was cleaned, I started running the catalyst.
How many miles are on this DPF filter?
839,000.
Okay. The FMI 16 and SPN 81 is the diesel particulate intake pressure. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
Okay. So that could be a couple things. It could be a small exhaust leak. It reads the pressure before and after so that it knows how much exhaust fracture somewhere, like a gasket that got rolled. When did this code start coming about? Like how long ago?
I got it on August 12th, and then I did a parked forced regen and reset the codes because I have an OTR diagnostic tool. and then it came back August 21st, the exact same code.
Okay. And do you notice any leaks at all? Like you see any soot build up around the after treatment system?
No.
Okay. It may be the filter itself. If you want to take it into like a DPF alternative dealer, have them clean it. But their big thing is they can flow test it, and that'll tell you if it's actually burned out in the center or not. Now, did you say this
Okay.
filter had like 800,000 miles on it?
Yeah, I've never changed it.
Okay. Did you happen to have a DPF alternative franchise clean it back in February, earlier this year?
No, I just went to a local shop and they sent it, I believe, up near Toronto, Ontario, to bake it.
Okay, so they just did a bake. Okay. The thing with the baking is they're just burning out the wet soot that's in there. They can't flow test or test it to see if the filter's actually still in good usable shape. The DPF alternative franchise, which is what we bought into here, we opened up a store. I like it for a multitude of reasons, and this is one of the biggest ones. When a guy brings a filter to us, we will actually flow test it to see how many CFM is coming through it, to see how much restriction. And they put it on a graph chart like red, yellow, green, just like a stoplight. And then they do their air knife, which is kind of like a sandblasting cabinet without the abrasive. Then it gets a water rinse, but then it goes into an ultrasonic rinse tank, and the ultrasonic sound waves break up any carbon or ash that's inside the canister itself you can't get to from the outside. And then that dissolves in a special cleaning solution, gets a final rinse, and then a kiln bake overnight just to dry it out. Then they flow test it again. Now, here's where it gets really intriguing. If the flow test, let's say, I'm going to throw some hypothetical numbers out there. Let's say a brand new filter for your truck is supposed to flow at a 1.80. A really dirty filter that comes to me might be at like 3.2. So we do all of our cleaning, we come back, and now it flows at a 1.65. And you think, oh, it's better than new. No, not the case, unfortunately. That just means the center of the element of the honeycomb is burned out in the center, that it's actually flowing too much air through it too fast, which could be the pressure loss, the code that you're seeing. So it's either going to be a pressure sensor, the wiring to the sensor, an exhaust leak somewhere, or it could be the filter itself is just burned out internally that you can't see it with the naked eye. But if you wanted to schedule an appointment, we could figure that out for you.
Okay, now, do you have one in Ontario?
Yeah, DPF Alternatives is a national franchise. They can do the cleaning and the flow testing and stuff, but the actual diagnostics, unfortunately, I only have one shop here in the U.S. in Pennsylvania. But if you work with a good
Yeah, I've
shop
been to
up
your
there,
shop.
they should
Yep.
good site. Oh, okay. So you know where we are then.
Yeah. So
But
it's
yeah, there's
basically just bring the
there's
truck to you
DPF
guys.
Alternative. We could do it, yeah, everything in-house here, one-stop shop, if you want to bring it here. If because you're in a different country, I understand too, but there are DPF alternative dealers all North America. They're through Canada and all through the US.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll book an appointment in then.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Florida. Mike, it's your turn.
Hey guys, I have a question about a turbo that went out a couple of weeks ago. Had it's a 2WS Cat and a 2020 Coronado glider. I don't know, probably had 300,000 miles on the turbo, and a chunk of the wheel just broke off, and of course lost all the power. I put my old one back on, my wastegated, and I called back into Pittsburgh. I couldn't remember which one I had purchased, and he just said it was the Cat 1.5. So I go to your webpage and you've got two of them there. I don't know which one I had, and what's the difference in them?
Probably a different size of the wheel. Let me get on my website here real fast. But they make like a 1.5 and a 78 millimeter. We make a 1.5 and an 80 millimeter, and even an 82. Where's your horsepower set at?
It's probably around 650 to 700. It's got your tune.
Okay. Okay, so you would want my 1.5 with the 78 132. So we have like our 1.5, and then there's our Cat HP 2.0, which is a bigger one, millimeter 145 ratio. But for your kind of horsepower range, you would want 1.5.
Who's got the leaf blower in the background?
No, hold on.
There we go. The noise was wiping everything out. I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
The one you would want would be our Cat HP 1.5, and it's a 78 millimeter wheel with a 132 AR. Now, are you pulling like extremely heavy loads, or are you just like general, like 82,000 or less?
Yeah, 80,000 or less.
Okay. So are you a guy that just kind of bebops around, or are you a guy that really likes to be in the hammer lane?
No, I'm 60 miles an hour.
Okay. So you would definitely want the 1.5 78 millimeter then. If you were like, say, in Australia or Canada pulling trains and at 650-ish horsepower, you'd want to probably step it up because you're using every last drop of horsepower that engine can produce. In this case, this will be quick spool up. It'll give you great performance, excellent fuel mileage, and just a pleasure to drive. You'll be very happy with this one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm back with my wastegated stock one now. It's doing fine. The spare was nice. I'd like to get another one. One more question on the. For some reason I keep breaking manifold bolts. I'm saying that at 500,000 miles I've probably broke four or five. Is there a better bolt?
Absolutely. Are they Caterpillar bolts?
I know some of them have come with the original ones was your manifolds will come with a kit. I don't know, my local guys.
Okay. If they're Caterpillar bolts, that's a very common thing with them, because Caterpillar uses a Chinese bolts company to contract all their bolts fulfillment. And the problem with that is China doesn't have the iron ore content we have over here, so therefore their bolts are not as strong. They seem to break off a lot easier. Excuse me. The ones we use are a hardened stainless hardened stainless steel stud. And if you break one of those, you're doing something. Have you broken the stainless steel ones off before?
I know the original one of them broke. And it seems like it's probably three of the four have been the bottom rear, closest to the firewall. It's always that same one. Now, one time it was the front bottom one. It's been pretty easy to get it out and fix it. It's not a huge deal. But if you sell a better bolt, I think I just need to buy some more studs and the next time.
Because of how you answer that question, I'm going to guarantee you they're not mine. Because you said they were easy to get out. Mine are not.
Yeah.
So if you break one of our stainless ones, you're going to be drilling for a long time. I would not be getting a Christmas card from you this year. I'll put it that way.
Oh boy.
So yeah,
he put
definitely have.
Now the first one I remember he had to weld a nut onto the stud to get it out, which was probably yours. Now the other ones he had he caught a reverse drill bit or something, and he was able to back it out with that. So yeah, that might have been the case.
Yeah, very common thing.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
actually
I'll just order some
plate
studs.
to make.
Yeah, I'll get some studs on the turbo and have them as a spare. Okay, that's all I needed. I appreciate your help.
All right. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Massachusetts. Harold, welcome.
Gentlemen, good to hear your voices there. Hey, the fellow that just called with the code on the Cummins after treatment, that could be that little box in the middle that has a wiring loom going to it and two leads, tubes coming from the front of the filter and one to the back. It senses the pressure differential, like you were saying, but I've had to replace this one twice on this truck. And knock on wood, that's all I've ever done to it other than clean it. But that's pretty simple. I've changed them myself. They're not easy because of the connections they put onto those tubes there. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. I had that, and I had seen it on the OTR tool as well, and cleared it out. And a sign of that being bad is regenning all the time, because it's not sensing correctly, and so it, yeah, stinks when it does that. Anyway, the stainless steel, we did the same thing on our Caterpillars. We had them break in and switch to those stainless steels. Your information is exactly correct on that, Eric.
Thanks, Harold.
No problem. Always appreciate your wise words.
There we go. Anything else?
Just looking at the beautiful color change up here in Massachusetts today, enjoying the beautiful fall weather. That's about it. So, all right, guys, I just thought I'd throw that out there for what it's worth.
All right, thanks. That's a good way to spend the day. That is the one thing I miss out in the Pacific Northwest. We don't get the kind of colors in the fall you get in the Northeast. Our first big RV trip that Lisa and I ever took when we were full time, we spent almost 6 weeks in New England right during the fall leaf season. It was spectacular. Let's go to Pennsylvania. Kim, welcome. Oh, let me try that again. There we go.
Costs are out of control. Hey, I picked up in Boston some seafood. Well, south of Boston there.
Yeah.
And that cold warehouse charged the broker $403 to load 17 pallets onto my trailer. And I took that to another cold warehouse over by Allentown, and that cost $217. So the broker paid me $700 to go 225 miles, but they paid the lumpers just over $600.
That's crazy.
So,
and it was all palletized.
Tell me that broker made any money.
And it stayed
palletized?
all
palletized.
And it stayed that way?
Yeah, it stayed that way.
That's insane.
It is. I'm not allowed to go on the dock anymore ever since the China virus. You know, these cold warehouses that I go to.
Yeah.
Because I used to be able to just pull it off myself, and sometimes you just take off the top layer and put it on another pallet, and it's just that simple.
Right.
But you know, they brought in these third party, like relay payment, so they don't even want you getting out of your truck.
Wow.
Everything just goes to your phone, so you have to send an express code to them.
Really?
And that's how they get paid. You don't even write a check anymore.
Wow.
Yep.
What a stupid system.
Isn't that crazy?
Have. Yeah, it is a really stupid system. I've never understood why we can't do better than this.
We used to complain about just having to pay a lump or two unload.
Correct.
If you go to the East Coast, now you have to pay a lump or two load.
I can't believe we're going farther down this road when we should have solved this a long time ago. This is such an inefficient, stupid system.
Certainly is. But hey, anyway, I called about my oil sample. This is the first, I've had the OPS now almost 80,000 miles.
Okay.
And at Pittsburgh Power put it on. Hey guys at Pittsburgh Power. Eric, I just talked to you the other day about my sample. Well, let me tell Kevin and the audience out there. So Pittsburgh Power pulled the base sample. So I had that in my bottle, and I wasn't going to send that in until I sent my first sample in. Well, I took my first sample at about 30,000 miles. But unfortunately, I did the envelope, did all that stuff, and I put it in the blue United States Post Office box because I thought it was USPS. No, it wasn't that.
No, it's not.
So my first two samples did not go to the lab.
Let me ask you a question. Is this a new truck?
No, it's a 2018 Cascadia DD15.
Eric, am I missing something here? Why isn't the 26 flagged on aluminum?
Probably because of the amount of oil time, 71,000 miles. That would be the only reason why I would think, but I thought it would have been flagged too. 26 parts per million seems a little high to me.
Really high to not be flagged at all. I mean, they're calling that normal, like level 0. That seems odd to me.
Let me pull back up Billy's.
Yeah, I think
His was flagged for aluminum.
I thought the same thing. I have that sample. I thought the same thing when I saw the 26 on aluminum.
Yeah, that should be flagged at some level. That's excessive.
Even with 70,000, I would have thought so too.
Right. And
So you
honestly,
think I should just drain the oil now?
at 70,000, I mean, these things are, I mean, that's just not far beyond the normal OEM oil change without a bypass filter. So, boy, it seems to me like any time aluminum gets into the 20s, it's usually flagged at like a level 3.
Well, the last sample we just looked at, I just pulled it back up. He was at 38, and it was only flagged at a level 3.
Okay. Well, you would think 26 would get you something. I mean, normally aluminum is under 5 in most cases, certainly under 10. That seems excessive.
Yeah, it does.
Huh. I mean, everything else looks fine. I mean, there's no fuel dilution. Your soot's nice and low. What oil do you have in this? A 5W, a T6.
Yep, T6 Shell.
I've got another question. They've got a baseline there, that first blue line. Why is the baseline on T6 for viscosity 13.9?
I wonder if they scored that on a 15W40 because you can get T6 in 540 and 1540.
Yeah, a full synthetic, the T6, the viscosity even on the 40 weight is usually down, I thought, in the low 12s, not almost 14. That seems odd,
Yeah,
too.
I thought it was like right around 12.
Yeah.
8.
Well, and if you look at
See, that was why I was calling.
His oil sample tested at 12.8 for viscosity, which seems correct, except their baseline is 13.9. That seems wrong.
I wonder if they got it on a 1540.
It seems like that is a 1540 viscosity and not a full synthetic. Like a T5 or even a T4. I mean, it is where you would see that viscosity number.
Mineral based.
Right.
I'm glad that you're touching on that because that was my main question there.
Oh yeah. That seems odd.
Do I want to bring the bottles, dump the Hot Shot Secret base in to match the 14 viscosity, or what do I want to bring that up to?
No, the base has nothing to do with this viscosity. You're at 2.4 on your base, which is where I was saying we're still fine. That seems to be kind of the bottom of where they want to see it. You don't want to run it too much lower. So there's no reason to change this oil. I don't see any problems with the oil itself. I would just add some base to it.
Okay, I added 2 16-ounce bottles of the Hot Shot Secret base, the TCM.
Isn't there a?
And that
there's a
there's a
formula on the
32-ounce bottle also.
Right.
But unfortunately, I bought this at an auto parts store, and the back of the label only has Power Stroke, Cummins, and Duramax.
Okay.
So when I called, I talked to Eric, and he said that they sell 32-ounce bottles, and it has information for big trucks on it.
Got it.
So I went online and looked at the bottle that Eric has, the bigger bottle.
Right.
And it said dump in the 32 ounces if I want to increase my base by 4 points. So right now in my head, since I dumped in 32 ounces, my base should be 6.
Which is fine because the standard on this is almost 9, 8.6 or so on the original oil. So yeah, if you got back to 6, you're in a great place.
Okay. And then just keep looking at intervals for samples and then just doing what the lab says?
That's exactly what I would do. I would just sample every 25,000 and go from there.
Okay. Now, what a switch compared to when I first started driving with my N14, the FLD, dumping out oil every 15,000 miles.
Oh yeah, yeah. I go back
You know,
far
look how
enough
much
that
I've
it was.
saved.
I go back far enough where it was 10,000-mile oil changes, and I remember some old timers that thought 5,000 was better. But
Yikes.
that was
Oil's
also
cheap.
that well, and oil was kind of cheap back then. Oil isn't really cheap anymore, and a lot of those
No.
guys, if you were doing 5,000-mile oil changes, you were doing it yourself, and it was pretty darn simple. Took you less than an hour. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah. I have to do it once a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, you know, those guys weren't running the kind of, I don't know if they were running the kind of miles that we're running, were they? Because back then, in your dad's day, there weren't really interstates to get across the country, you know, like there are now.
How old do you think I am?
I'm not saying that they were dirt roads by any means, but a lot of these interstates are brand new. I mean, my Garmin has to update every year,
you
and
know,
I get new roads on there.
Our interstate system was built in the 50s. So prior to the 50s,
Oh,
you
okay.
had no interstates whatsoever. Since the 50s, I mean, we keep building new highways, but for the most part, our interstate system was pretty complete by the 70s. I mean, we had most of the country covered. But so let me try to think. So my grandfather was actually driving in the 20s. And the big difference for him, most trucking back then was local. I mean, there wasn't a lot of long haul stuff back then. But the one thing that was fairly new, and it was what my grandfather did, my grandfather was an owner operator leased to a moving company. And moving was long haul. I mean, people were heading to the West Coast. And that was, you measured that trip in weeks.
Yep. Well, that's one of the things that we've done with our camper. We've gone Route 66.
Right.
Even though it's not there, we try to stay on it as best as we could.
Yeah,
that's beautiful country.
Yeah,
right
Lisa
there.
and I did the same thing. A couple trips, we tried to get off the interstates completely and run the old roads. I think the one that would be fun to do, it would just take a long time, would be 30 across the country. And 30 right here where I live was the main route through Oregon. 84 kind of replaced 30 out here. That one would be fun to follow all the way across the country. But we've done 66. We've done the 2 lanes through the northern part of the country from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan out west that way. It's a lot of fun doing that.
Oh, US 2.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We're going to do US 41 from Copper Harbor down to Miami, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. So
hey, should I worry about this aluminum, or just when the lab flags it? Because you were on that right away, like you thought that was a problem right off, but it doesn't sound like it really is.
I don't see it as a problem. I just thought it was odd that they didn't flag it at any level at all. That they consider that a zero.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about it. If you're sampling every 25,000 and something starts to go wrong, we'll see it long before it's a problem.
Okay. Now, it just happens that my next interval to change filter is to change the OPS filter at the same time.
Yeah, Eric, what would you expect if we continued to see aluminum climb? I don't know if I've ever really seen any specific parts fail because aluminum was climbing. What I normally see is just an engine that's probably on the downside and it's worn out. And you start to see all the wear metals climb late in life. Have you ever seen, like, what part would fail if we were really seeing a lot of aluminum?
Could be a piston, thrust bearings or wheels in a turbo, the turbo bearings, and then even some main or rod bearings. But it also depends on what it's accompanied with. If I see aluminum and potassium, it's usually the gentleman or person, I should say, just changed their charge air cooler. Potassium would be like an anti-corrosion spray on aluminum particles. If it's sodium and potassium, like that first caller we had, It's
Coolant.
probably going to be a coolant leak
Right.
from an aluminum element somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't.
I think there's a thrust washer. I think it's a thrust washer or a bushing that's going bad.
That and that's
But
pretty rare. But
not.
I would think if you only see aluminum climbing, those would be kind of the parts we'd have to start looking for.
Mm-hmm. We need to get a schematic of a DD15
Right.
and look and see what's aluminum in there.
Yeah, my engine's at 574, and you know the oil seems okay. But just before I change the oil, would that be a good time to do the diesel force cleaning? So when I put
Yeah,
new
it would.
oil in, everything in the engine is all cleaned out, all pretty much brand new. And then once you do that cleaning, would you be able to find where that aluminum is coming from, or not?
Not from the cleaning, no. But the diesel force cleaning system, we would do basically a PM service for you. So you wouldn't want to change your oil before you do a diesel force because we have to do the oil change after the diesel
Right.
force.
Right. Right. But then I would start out brand new with brand new oil, brand new clean engine, and then I would work out from there.
Yep, exactly. And then you can get a good baseline reference to see where it's coming from.
Okay. But you wouldn't be able to tell where that aluminum's coming from beforehand. If it's
No,
even
because
a
it's a
problem.
multi-source metal.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's
okay.
a problem. But
We'd have to find out. We'd have to find out what is aluminum inside. Like on a big cam, the thrust washer on the crankshaft's aluminum. The accessory drive housing has aluminum in it. So you have to find out on the DD. This is a DD15, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. You have to find out what's aluminum inside. Maybe Eric, go back and talk after the show and talk to one of the guys, one of our mechanics that work on the DD15s, and see where the aluminum could be coming from, and then maybe this gentleman could call you.
Okay, that sounds
We've
good.
done an on a platform yet, but I can look into it. Maybe we can find some tech service bulletins or some diagrams like through the DTNA website.
Well, is it true that they consider this DD15 a disposable line? You run it till, and then you just put in a new one? Isn't that, it seems like all the forums are saying that these are just use them and toss them.
I actually had a service manager from a Freightliner dealership tell me that.
Yeah. So, because of the cost, costs more to fix it or rebuild it than it is just to get a new engine, just put that in.
I think it's cost and liability. Like if you're an engine manufacturer like Detroit, if you do your reman center where you have, you know, employee A that just does this every single day, employee B that does this every single day, the chances of getting stuff wrong are a lot less that way because it's a machine. You know, you're just pumping them out. And I think they do it for that and for cost.
Well, sometimes you go to the shop and the guy that's working on your engine is also the guy that's cleaning cobwebs out of the basement. Like, you know, he has multiple jobs.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Kevin, one more thing.
Yeah.
So I got an air dog on from Michigan MD Alignment.
Okay.
Jim Fowler over there.
Yeah.
You can't call Jim Big Jim anymore.
Has
I
he
think
shrunk?
from the time that I first started going over there until I was just there Friday, it looks like he's lost nearly 75 pounds, maybe.
Wow. Okay. I know for a while there he
Yep.
was he was trying and struggling a little bit. So I'm glad to see it looks like it caught on.
Oh, he looks good.
Good. Good.
And he you know, cooks up some lunch, eggs and meat product.
Well, there you go.
No carbs there.
There you go.
Yep.
Good to hear.
Yeah, so we got that on. So I'm running the Air Dog now, the OPS one.
So you
Air
know,
tabs.
going way back to either my first, it might have been in the first year on the air. When I first got the contract at XM, and the two companies were separate back then, I only had the weekend shows. Just Saturday and Sunday was what I started with. Within a couple months, and this was 2007, within a couple months, they came to me and they gave me the midnight slot 7 days a week. And they kind of said you could do whatever you want with it. You could do, 5 shows live and then run replays on the other nights. And so I kind of looked at the schedule and I said, I'd rather than run replays, let's try some new shows, some new ideas. We'll take those 2 nights a week and we'll try new ideas and see what catches on. And one of my favorite ideas, I even tried to make a TV show out of this. I hired a film crew and spent a small fortune filming like 3 episodes. But we did a show on Friday nights called Turnaround. And the idea behind the show is I would take an owner operator who was struggling, and I would work with them pretty intensely until we turned their business around. And we would record it, and some of it I was actually going out and with the film crew. I was on location. We were filming with them. But I bring that up because one of the first people I worked with on that show Turnaround was Jim. Jim was an owner-operator back
cool
then.
is that?
Yeah, he was an owner-operator back then, and he was one of my first projects on the show Turnaround.
So do you have those episodes? Could you post them on the website?
Boy, I wish I could. I am so bad at keeping that kind of stuff. You switch computers and eventually stuff gets lost. And it's possible that we have somewhere, maybe in the warehouse, that we have DVDs with those first 3 episodes that we filmed. I mean, I filmed one in Michigan, I filmed one in Texas, and I filmed one in Kentucky. I was.
You know why it didn't go over?
Oh, I know.
You weren't like Gordon Ramsay, where you weren't throwing screwdrivers or wrenches at him, yelling at him.
You
dumb son of a!
You are exactly correct. That's what we figured out. That was the reason that show was never going to be popular. There wasn't any drama or controversy, and we actually sat down and said, could we pull it off? Could I be a jerk and start yelling at people? And I couldn't do it. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah, that would have been awful.
Yeah, but that's what it takes to make a show like that popular. So we knew why it wasn't going to work, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
anyway.
that would have been kind of cool. You could learn a lot from that show.
I
turn
think
them
so.
around. I mean,
yeah, I think so. We were having a lot of fun with it. Yeah, maybe I should go back and look to see if we have any of that stuff. Bruce, the other thing. I don't know if you might have it or not, or if we still have it anywhere. Do you have any of all that filming we did with that first signature engine? We got some good stuff out of that.
Oh, I think we probably still do.
We should go look for that kind of stuff. The other video that I must have somewhere, I've just got to go find it, it's one of my favorite videos of all time. Do you remember when we were down at Fitzgerald's and we were building the glider? So we had a Freightliner sitting there. I think it was a Columbia, actually. The engine wasn't in it yet. It was just a glider sitting there. And we put you under the hood and filmed it. Do you remember that video?
I remember it quite well.
Yeah, I love that video. We got to go find that one again. We were
called
making
it Chicken Wing Power.
That's right. We were making a joke. The hood was closed, and we were talking about this new truck we were building. And I said, we're actually going to power this truck on chicken wings. And when you open the hood, Bruce was standing in there pushing on the radiator like he was going to be pushing the truck down the road. That video is hilarious. We got to find that one.
Actually, my feet were up on the frame rail, and
that's right.
I was leaning against the radiator, so I was almost horizontal.
Yeah, we got to find
on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, we got to find that one. It was a good video.
Oh, we had some good times back then.
We did. All right, Kim, what else you got?
That's about it.
All right.
Michelle's working on the next quarter of the. She's transferred everything to your accounting system.
Good. Profit gauges.
And if it wasn't for profit gauges. And if we still had the N14 and the FLD, we wouldn't have the money to be able to reinvest. We're just struggling to keep that truck rolling.
Sometimes that
And look
happens.
at all the improvements that I've made on
Yeah.
this 2018.
That's awesome. Yep. Very good.
I mean, I've got Michelin all the way around. Okay. Hey, you have a great day. Thanks for the show.
Yep. And that's the beauty of the numbers. That's how we know. There are times when it makes absolute financial sense to keep an old truck and keep it running. We can show it in the numbers. There are other times where it doesn't make sense and it makes more sense to upgrade. But it's all in the numbers. One of the things I watch all the time is this space weather and what's going on, and it's been pretty wild lately. We see, aurora borealis all the way down to, I think this last time it made it all the way down to South America, which the guy that I follow that tracks the space weather said he thought that would have been impossible, that would have never been able to occur. But it did. And the reason we're seeing all these weird space weather patterns right now is because our poles are moving. The North and South Pole are moving, and they're moving a lot. I think the number was like 22 miles a year. This isn't one of those things where they're measuring it in inches a year. It's 22 miles a year for the last several years. And what they're worried about is, historically, we know the poles have actually completely flipped. The North Pole goes to the South Pole goes to the North. And supposedly when it happened before, that was when we lost the Neanderthals. They went extinct over that because of all the climate effects from that. What we're seeing right now, though, we're starting to lose satellites. The two companies, Starlink has lost satellites over this, and Telestat has lost satellites. So all of this activity, the solar activity, is really starting to disrupt communications, and all the predictions are this could get worse. So keeping an eye on that. Let's go to Pennsylvania. Oswald, welcome.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay?
We can. What's on your mind today?
Yes, you had a conversation a few days back with someone in regards to a tractor that was connected positive ground. Do you remember that?
Yes. And we mentioned it again today.
Yes, that is a common thing to see in some older farm equipment and even in some Class 8 trucks. I was in the land mobile radio market where I was a field engineer, and I did two-way radio in commercial vehicles. And Autocar back in the 70s had a positive ground as well.
So try to give me the really simple version of how this works, because I am totally confused on how we have a positive ground.
Well, first of all, you start with the battery. The positive post is connected to chassis ground, but the gauges, lights, and whatnot, they're all constructed with a positive ground internal connection. So the gauges, you can't take, for instance, an oil pressure gauge that is electronic in nature. You can't take that to a vehicle and just wire it up with a negative ground vehicle. It'll burn up the gauge. As far as light bulbs go, polarity doesn't mean anything. And your basic ignition system, that doesn't mean anything either. Your coils, spark plugs, distributors, that doesn't mean anything as well either. Now, if you've got a music radio in the vehicle, that'll be a problem.
What gets wired to the starter?
The negative cable from the battery goes to the starter, and the housing of the starter is at positive potential because the battery is connected to positive chassis.
God, that's so confusing to me. I was just starting to think I was getting my head around some of these electrical issues, and then we throw this in.
The coils in the starter have to be wound in such a manner that the starter can't run in reverse.
Well, that's what I was
thinking. It has to
thinking.
run in the correct direction.
Right. On some electrical components, the way you hook up the wires determines which way it turns.
Yeah, and polarity is sensitive on any motors, whether it be a blower motor for heat, a starter motor for an engine. They have to be internally wound. The coils have to be wound in a manner that the device turns in the direct, correct direction.
Huh. All right. Seems odd to me.
Now there's a possibility too, if you mount the starter, that even if the starter does turn backwards, if you mount it that the clockwise rotation is happy with the motor rotation, then it doesn't matter.
Okay. I'm glad we're not dealing with this anymore.
No, that went away a long time ago.
Yeah.
Even some of your older British 6-volt automobiles, Triumphs and MGTs, some of them were positive ground too.
Interesting. Huh. All right.
By the way, Kevin, you and I have a little bit of history.
What's that?
You worked as an independent contractor for RPS?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so did I.
Okay, when did you start?
I ran line haul from Lewisberry to New Stanton.
Okay. What year was that?
I had, in the 70s.
Okay. Right when they started.
I had a road boss with a 671.
Wait a minute. Am I confused? No, RPS wasn't around in the 70s. You're getting something confused here.
Well, it was roadway, but then they diverted. I think they split, and it was RPS. Now, I'm talking late in the 70s now, 79, 80, right around there.
Yeah, RPS, let me try to think back because we're going way back now, but I started with RPS not long after the company was formed. And I'm thinking I put my first truck on with them in 89. I think they started somewhere around 85 or later.
Well, I was with them for quite a while. I might have my ears off a little bit.
I think that's what I think you're just off a little bit. The history was Roadway was based in Akron, Ohio, right where I was living and working at the time. The executives from Roadway got together and formed RPS. Then eventually, and by this time I had moved everything down to Florida, but I was still with them. They spun off Roadway, the LTL company, and took all the other companies they had bought or started. They had Spartan, and I had trucks with Spartan at the time. That was another non-union LTL company. They started RPS. I think they bought Roberts Express, which was an expediter. And they had a couple other little companies in there. And this was all under Roadway. They actually spun off Roadway and renamed all the other companies Caliber Logistics. They went through and rebranded the entire company, all the trailers, everything. We had to rebrand all of our trucks with the new name. And in less than a year, it got bought by FedEx. And that's when it became FedEx Ground. And then we had to rebrand again. And the whole point of spinning off Roadway and rebranding all the other companies was to get somebody to buy it. I mean, that was the whole point, and it worked. But that was a weird year because we went from being RPS to being Caliber Logistics to being FedEx Ground, and it all happened in less than 12 months.
Yeah, now you got me thinking. The truck I had was a 1980 white Road Boss. So, yeah, it was early 80s and not 70s.
Yeah, that would make sense. And my first truck at Spartan, which was the first Roadway company that I put trucks on with, mine was a 79 Road Boss that I bought from Roadway.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I got 6.5 miles to the gallon with that.
You know, I think I was doing pretty darn good on my truck back then. In even doing city work, I think I was getting 6 something.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I even collected a few speeding tickets once in a while.
Well, I collected one every year because I was in Ohio and the speed limit was still 55. So I would get about one a year back then. Did yours have an air starter?
Yes, it did. And that sounded cool.
I missed those. That was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, people would do a snap around look like, what was that?
Oh, if you were bored, it was fun to just sit in the truck stop and wait till somebody walked right by the front of your truck and hit the starter. They just about come out of their
Yeah,
shoes.
tell me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
But that was a good truck. I still have it.
No way. Do you really?
Yep. I let my son use it in his landscape business.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
I took the fifth wheel off and put a dump body on it.
There you go.
For a dump truck.
There you go. Good setup. All right.
It's a good.
Oh, thanks for the call. Yeah. Boy, it's going back a ways. Let's go to South Dakota. Scott, welcome. Scott, are you there? Well, I'm not hearing anything on that line. Is anybody hearing me? Oh yeah, we lost the call. We lost that call.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, let's go to Oklahoma. Paul, what's on your mind?
Y'all back again.
Yes.
Aluminum and Detroit
hey,
oil
Paul.
samples.
Paul, just so you know,
you charge me double.
We charge double for the second call. Thank you.
Okay, right. I'll spend some money with you.
All right, thanks.
So, Mark Gwynn, he has the DD13, and he's had a lot of oil samples that show aluminum on 17 and 19. And his turbo did go out one time, and I said, well, there's your aluminum. And I think that within a couple of samples, after putting a new turbo on, he still had aluminum in there. He's probably listening, maybe. But I've noticed that a lot of people that call in with oil samples with Detroit, they have elevated aluminum numbers.
I'm going to go back and look at that. I don't know why I've never caught that before, and maybe that's why it's not flagged. Maybe that engine is just known for shedding off aluminum in those amounts, and it's not a problem.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So, and then being a long-time listener, I remember when you first started on the weekends, and then when you're on if you come on Nemo show or whatever.
Yeah.
And the common question was, I've got a Series 60 in a Freightliner Century class with 355 rear end, and what's my sweet
Don't
spot?
say it. Don't say it. That got so bad that I had to ban that question from my show for a while because that's all anybody would call and ask. I thought it was such a clever idea. When I came up with it, I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. This is really clever. And after about a month of that, I'm like, okay, we got to put a stop to this.
I think it was longer than a month.
It probably was.
I can, my old truck, I used to think that my sweet spot was in the driver's seat with that C16 and that 600 plus horsepower. That was a sweet spot to be in. And I was in the left lane, just sweet spotting it. So,
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there you have it.
All right. Good stuff.
Okay, I'll carry on.
All right.
Checking the mail.
There you go. All right. We're right at the top of the hour, and we're going to wrap this up for today. I guess we never heard from Leroy today. He must really be trying to troubleshoot something out there in the shop.
Yeah, we got a truck in here with a vibration, and vibrations, as you know, are really hard to diagnose. But we have magnetic microphones that you can put all over the truck, and it zeroes into frequency to determine the location of where it's starting from, so that we know that if it's between this hertz and this hertz, it's going to be the drive axle. If it's between that hertz and this hertz, then it's going to be rotational direction with the crankshaft. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's something in the engine or turning the same speed as the engine. So they're back there working on it. They're double teaming on a truck today. So yeah, he never did make it up, but we're we're making strides with this stuff. It takes special equipment and people thinking outside of the box to fix these newer water trucks.
Well, it's interesting because I was just about to ask about that technology, because I can remember that technology coming out about 15 years ago, where they had this system where you would put all these sensors on the truck and it would measure the hertz and tell you where it was probably coming from. And I thought that was going to be awesome, except I almost never hear about this. So it's interesting I'm hearing about it again. In reality, when we talk about vibrations, it does hertz. Two things I wish we had better ways of finding and diagnosing. One are vibrations and the other one is air leaks.
Exactly. Well, air leaks we kind of have nailed down with our smoke machine. You know, we can put pressurized smoke in it to look for air leaks that way.
See, that's interesting because we failed at that. When I was part of the shop down in Tennessee, when Robert Fitzgerald and I had started that shop down there, that's why we bought our original smoke machine. We bought it to try to find air leaks, and we could not get it to work for that. When we called the manufacturer and started like troubleshooting, they said, here's the problem. You've got long runs, you've got, fittings where the diameter shrinks down, and they said, we don't think you're going to be able to keep that smoke suspended long enough to find everything. And we weren't really having a lot of luck with it. And I still remember the day we were sitting there talking about it. We had just spent like $1,400 on this machine, and it wasn't working for what we wanted. And while we were sitting there talking about it, one of the other mechanics came over and was talking about an intake leak that was not in the charger cooler. We knew it was somewhere, but we couldn't find it. It wasn't the charger cooler. And that's when Robert and I got the idea to do the smoke machine to test the intake system. We could never get it to work on the brake lines.
Eric, are we using it on the brake lines?
No, I misunderstood him. I thought you meant on the engine. No, on the chassis side, no, you are correct.
Okay.
Way too long of a run.
And they said when you go through the small fittings, the smoke's just going to drop out of the system, and they were right. We just could never get it to work for the airlines, but that was when we figured out we could use it for the intake. All right.
Correct.
All right,
Kevin, we're going to do a show with you soon about all the specialty equipment that we have in the shop for doing specialty type work.
I'd love that.
So,
yeah, I would love that. That would be interesting. All right.
There was a saying in a body shop back when I was 16, 17, 18. It said on the wall, they had it written, "We have done so much with so little for so long. We can now do everything with nothing." And when I got into the diesel engine business, I said, we're not going to let that happen. We're not going to be that way, because you cannot work on trucks if you don't buy the equipment.
No,
So when people say, why don't you open up a shop here and open up a shop there?
Yeah.
It takes millions of dollars of equipment today.
It does. And then employees and training.
And then,
right.
Right.
Well, but Bruce, you remember the body shop. That saying was true. I mean, we weren't buying specialty tools. We were using blocks of wood and any hammer we could find, and just whatever you had to find to get the job done.
When I did Corvette body work, I used to take two paint stirrers and tape them together, and that way I could arch it to match the body. But back then, a paint stirrer was there was some wood in it, not like the paint stirrers today.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
all right.
yeah, you're right.
All right. Let's.
Okay.
Oh, I just realized all three of us have a body and painting background. Eric, I didn't know that about you till today.
Yeah, I did quite a bit of it.
Yeah, I did too.
He painted our first glider that we had in Louisville with the light blue fenders. He painted those.
Oh, did you really?
Then the customer that bought it, the customer that bought it wanted them dark, so he painted them dark.
Yeah.
It was an 08 Shelby Mustang, blue color we painted up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You know, one of the things I had, so I started painting when I was 16. I had a brother-in-law who was one of the most incredible body man I have ever seen. And his real secret wasn't like crazy custom work. He could do that kind of stuff, but his real secret was how much money he could make, because almost all the, I don't know if it's still like this or not, the body shops used to be all flat rate. When the job came in, if it was estimated at 8 hours to do the job, the body man themselves, I would get paid 8 hours once I finished that job. And it didn't matter if it only took me 2, or it didn't matter if it took me 15. You got paid 8 no matter what. That was just how you got paid. And for the most part, if you were really good and fast, that was an awesome system. You could work a 40-hour week and get paid for 70 if you were really good. And he was the best I had ever seen. And everybody else in the body shop made fun of him because when he got up to go get parts or supplies or anything, he ran. And he did that all day. And he cranked out more work, and the work was good. The problem is if you try to go too fast and it comes back, because there's a problem with it, you don't get anything the second time. It's all up to you. But he was good, and he ended up, he was a multimillionaire before he was 40 as a body man. He was also one of the
Wow.
cheapest people I ever knew. He had a brother, and there was a time there where his brother was getting a ride to work with him, and he would not let his brother play the radio in the car because they said that took life off of his battery. That-
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with it at all.
I never wanted to live like that. So.
Exactly, I know, but he was the other thing I remember about him. So this is in the 70s, because I was 16 when he started teaching me how to paint cars and do body work, and I was doing it at home and making an awful lot of money doing it. But I also remember that was when we had stagflation. Mortgage rates were 15 and 16%, but CDs were paying 10%. And he had he was in his, would he still been in his 20s then, maybe late 20s, early 30s? He had like $100,000 in CDs. And those CDs were throwing off $10,000 a year in earnings on interest. So,
Wow.
yeah, but that's so.
When I started doing the body work, my labor rate was $4 an hour.
Was it really? I didn't even
$4 an hour.
I didn't have an hourly rate. I would just bid every job. Somebody would bring me a car and tell me what they wanted done to it, and I would just give them an estimate on it. I didn't even really have an hourly rate. And then I found a guy who was starting like a little used car dealer on the side. He had his dealer's license, and he was buying cars that were kind of beat up or a little wrecked, and he was paying people to fix them. And I ended up, I got more work from him than I could handle. I mean, anytime I wanted work, all I had to do was grab one of his cars. And I was making a lot of money back then doing that at home. But then I went into the military, and I ended up repainting almost every vehicle in our company. We had Chevy Blazers was the kind of our off-road vehicle back then. And they were all camouflage, that woodland pattern camouflage. I ended up repainting all of our trucks, and I repainted all of our helicopters.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet they loved you in there.
You know what? There's an even better story here. So you guys know the way that you get that super high gloss on paint is you've got to get depth, and then you've got to get all the scratches out, because the scratches are what kind of kill the gloss and create the haze. So I'm sure both of you two remember pink fill and glaze.
Absolutely.
Remember that stuff? So I did almost all exclusively lacquer back then. So I would spray the color, I would wet sand it, spray more coats, wet sand it again. Then I'd start on clear and spray a couple coats, wet sand it, and then finish it with, buffing and the pink fill and glaze. When I was in the military on the Cobra helicopters, we were just starting to fly with night vision goggles. And those night vision goggles back then were like $30,000 a pair. And we would have to go fly helicopters with these things on. And the wind screens, the glass or the windshields on the Cobra helicopter, you got one above, they're on the sides of you. They were a plastic of some kind, plexiglass, something, and they would scratch and get really hazy. And in the daytime, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when we started trying to fly these things with night vision goggles, it was a nightmare. There were just reflections everywhere. You couldn't tell what you were looking at. It was horrible. And they were looking at needing to replace all of these windscreens, and they were really expensive. And I came in one weekend with all my body work stuff, fillers and polishes and all that stuff. And I played around and I came up with a system where I could make those things look like glass. And I ended up doing all of those too. Then the pilots really loved me because that was a real problem for them.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. You missed your calling.
Yeah, I did that for a while. I got tired of it. I made an awful lot of money doing it, though.
You did good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well,
it's amazing that
go ahead.
When there was a judge for International Show Car Association, and we'd be putting cars in the Cobo Hall in Detroit and all the other shows that we worked, people would take the fill and glaze and put it in a squeeze bottle and then wrap masking tape around it so nobody knew what they were using.
Right.
I'd walk up and say, Phil and Glaze does a nice job, doesn't it? And then just look at you.
Yeah,
You can tell as soon as they squirted it on. So
I just called it the pink stuff.
it was that's right. All right, Kevin, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Perfect. We will see you next week. Thanks to the team from Pittsburgh Power. As always, if you have any questions, give them a call. We will see you back here tomorrow for Destination Health. I have another guest I'm really looking forward to. This is another guest that I met at the Cardio Miracle Tucker event out in Salt Lake City. But health practitioner Robert Scott Bell. He's been doing this a long time. Really good guy. He'll be on the show with me tomorrow, so tune in for that. Have a great day. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.